happy 131 days of horror. We're back here for yet another year of horror movies and more horrors in the month of October. And as your two favorite ghouls back here, I'm Uncle Logan Myers, my good mate over there.
And I'm Uncle Henry Hill, and we've got a slasher film for you today. A film that takes place 23 years after the original film. And that film is
Psycho.
Psycho
2.
2.
22 years later, Norman Bates is home.
And both being huge fans of the original film, like most people all over the world, of Alfred Hitchcock, classic film. What he's most known for, the master of suspense himself, Hitchcock, creating this character and bringing this character, I should say, to the screen. Anthony Perkins playing Norman Bates, an infamous mother in the shower scene. But, part 2 came out 23 years after the original, 1983. They went about this movie in a different approach compared to the original, obviously not being black and white, but they went about this much like other films in the 80s, a slasher. Basically, the setup is Norman Bates, after 22 years of being psychiatric care, he returns back to solitude, back to a normal life, and hoping to forget his past and people around him that knew him, hoping, they forget about it too, and he can live a normal life because he's healthier and better, right? Wrong.
That's right. He's completely rejuvenated, and he's back to being the Norman that should have been loved by mother better back when he was a kid. But we find out more to his backstory too. With Norman, he talks a lot about how he had a bad childhood with his mom, and we go deeper into the psyche of Norman here. But you really get like a normal performance from Norman. It feels like maybe he is all better now. Maybe he's been fixed behind bars there talking to psychiatrists, and maybe they did something. And that the film kind of makes you question that, is he crazy still, or has he, is he okay now? That's kind of what the film is set up. And, it's him battling against that. He's getting these calls and you don't know if it's a prank from other people or if mother's really communicating with them again.
Yeah, and it sets up a few great characters in this. We have Meg Tilly, Jennifer Tilly's sister. This character in this film is kind of the love interest that goes to stay at Bates Motel, meets up with Anthony Perkins' character Norman Bates. He's like a cook at the local restaurant. Meet up, and she needs a place to stay, stays up there, and it sets up their kind of relationship. And kind of a cool twist with her character too towards the end, something I didn't expect. Robert Loggia, is in this film. We love that guy. He plays Dr. Raymond, Norman's doctor in this film. And Dennis Franz plays Toomey, which is like the local bully. He's like the manager.
Sleazeball.
Yeah, exactly. He's the manager of Bates Motel when Norman was locked up for so long. Comes back to return to the hotel, and Dennis Franz's character is such a douchebag, and he fires him on the spot. And then the rest of the film, Dennis Franz's character is messing with Norman. So there's some cool characters in this film.
Yeah, it was cool seeing Robert Loggia right away. It lends the film more credibility when you have, big legendary actors like that in your movie. Back then, he was in a big time in his career. He'd done Scarface, among other films. He was huge back then. So to have Robert Loggia really lended credibility, much needed credibility to a sequel to Psycho, 23 years later. Something was going to have to, sell the movie, and they got some big stars. And like you mentioned, this is Dennis Franz, a young Dennis Franz, probably in his 30s. Ultimate New York douchebag, sleazebag, sleazy hotel owner that is hosting basically drug and sex parties at the hotel. And Norman kicks his ass out of the place right away. But, there's conflict between those two throughout the whole film that, lends a lot to the story. But it was cool seeing those two interact, and seeing Dennis Franz, before NYPD Blue and before all, that time of his career. So it's funny. But, I had a pretty great time with this movie, going in, I had never seen this movie before, just figuring it was an unnecessary sequel. They're trying to cash in, 23 years later, what were they going to do to add to Hitchcock's story? But I liked where they went, and it feels pretty relevant.
This had a very cool twist in the movie. Something that I didn't catch early on in the movie. I didn't predict. Very, very cool finding out about Norman's mother. It really wasn't his mom, it's some other lady. And it sets up a cool kill scene at the end with Norman finally snapping. Really throughout the film, it wasn't much of him killing, but there's some great gore scenes with this. But you're not really sure if is Norman imagining this, hearing these voices, or actually, somebody calling him, which we find out. It really is his character Lila, played by Vera Miles, which was fantastic. Her and Mary, played by Meg Phillip's mother-daughter, are basically trying to drive Norman crazy. So all the stuff he thinks he's hearing or imagining, has a cool twist on it. It really sets him an awesome ending and something that I didn't predict. So I thought that was really well done. The writing was fantastic in this movie. I thought the dialogue was really good too. Anthony Perkins, like always, playing this character. I couldn't see anybody else playing this. Vince Vaughn now. Anthony Perkins is the OG, and he always plays this character, knocks it out of the park. And it's just definitely one of the better sequels. I was really impressed with this. Tom Holland writing the script. He's huge in the horror industry. Child's Play, Fright Night. So him penning the script for this movie, I thought it was very original, unique, and something that stood up on its own compared to other slashers, Friday the 13th, Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street to the 80s. It had its own, take on it, original story, and also had the slasher aspects to it, which I really appreciated.
Yeah, you really talked about all the high points in what you just said. I agree with everything you just said. Loved going back to this, the hotel. And at this point, the first one was in black and white, going into color and taking the Bates Motel and, giving it the iconic look, still with the steps, and then with the hotel, right down at the bottom of the steps. I thought everything looked great. I love the look of the film. It's cool. It's, really is 80s. But like you mentioned, it doesn't feel like a cheap horror movie. It feels like they really took time with the script. Everything was really fleshed out. I liked all the twists and turns with the characters, like you mentioned. And Anthony Perkins, this was a really great performance for him. He really gets to show everything here. You see him go crazy, but you also see him and sympathize with him. And that's a testament to Anthony Perkins, like you mentioned, being the OG and best Norman Bates. But it's all about mother, and this movie keeps up with that. And I thought they did that in a really awesome way. They could have just copied and pasted from the first one, but they really made Psycho 2 and made it its own movie and a sequel that really holds up and stands the test of time. And I had a really great time with watching it my first time.
Yeah, I was on vacation. I was watching the Shudder show about like the greatest horror movies of all time or whatever. Eli Roth, Greg Nicotero, all the big names in the horror industry. Mick Garrison. We're talking about Psycho 2, and I'm like, we need to review this. I've never seen it. I can't believe I've never seen this movie, but I felt like this is a big part of my childhood because I remember moving to Illinois in 1990, going to the video store and seeing the Psycho 2 poster in there with, Norman Bates, the house in the background, backlit, the stairs, and it was just creeped me out. And also Anthony Perkins looked like my grandpa, so it was cool. Kind of comparison the two. I always thought he was like a killer or something, but not really. It just looked a lot alike. So it was a movie I always wanted to get around to, never did. I'm glad I did, for this Halloween season. It's a movie we both highly recommend, really fantastic. Also check out that Shudder series talking about the greatest horror movies of all time, really big name horror movie producers, directors, actors that's really diving into horror flicks. So that being said, I'm going to give Psycho 2 from 1983 a 4.5 out of 5 mother hair pieces.
I'm glad you recommended this movie to me. A sequel that I probably wouldn't have ever watched hadn't it been for this. Let's cover some movies that we haven't reviewed before and haven't seen before. And I'm really glad I watched this. This is one of the better sequels that I've seen. And I could see myself definitely revisiting this in, the future Halloween seasons. It's a really good one. Anthony Perkins as Norman really nails it in this role. And I loved all the writing, it was just well done with the story. It kept you guessing all the way up into the end. And, you mentioned all the classic, things that you remember from childhood about Bates Motel and Anthony Perkins and Mother and the whole lore around this franchise that, Alfred Hitchcock was the mastermind of. So in line with that, I was thinking about the time that we visited Universal Studios in Hollywood, and we got to go to the back lot there and see the actual Bates Motel. Awesome
Dream come
set.
true.
Location, and really a dream come true to go there and see it in person. Blown away by it. And it was awesome to go back and revisit the Bates Motel and Norman Bates and all these classic characters, and to head back there for this Halloween season. I had a great time with this movie, and I recommend it to all you guys. Based on my first watch, I am going to give Psycho 2 a 4 out of 5 mother hair pieces. Come here, Norman.
Also, for any fans out there, there's the show Bates Motel that me and this guy talked about a while ago, and I talked about. I did the solo reviews of that show. Freddie Highmore as a young Norman Bates, really fantastic series. Vera Farmiga playing Mother, just really underrated show. Me and this guy are huge fans of obviously the franchise, Psycho, Hitchcock, and all that, but that really dives into the early stages of Norman Bates. So definitely check it out if you guys haven't seen it. Also, check out these wild boys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or website, Cinephellas.com, for the latest, greatest TV movie news and horror reviews.
Oh, as you say. What other spooky treats and awesome movies do we have to watch, Uncle Logan?
I don't know. Probably mostly Uncle Steve berating us the entire month of October.
Right. No kidding. That's really spooky. That's the scariest of all. We have Hocus Pocus 2 coming out soon, newer horror film. That's one of the next movies that we'll be covering here. A lot of awesome movies to review this time. We have new movies and we have these kind of older films like Psycho 2. So it's going to be a great Halloween season. We want to thank everybody for watching our video and for following along with us during these
31 days of horror.
We're going to have some spooky treats all month long, so make sure you stay tuned and check us out right here on our YouTube channel. So that being said, it's your two favorite Dracula impersonators signing out until the next review for 31 Days of Horror. Cheers!
Cheers.